Okay, here we go with video 4 of our pencil sketch. The first thing that, if you've watched the other videos, you're going to notice is I deleted his nose. I didn't like it. I mentioned that in the end of the last video. I didn't really like it. And the reason it wasn't coming out right is my interpretation of how the running stitch worked in the Floriani software is not really how it worked. And hopefully I can explain what I'm going to do different this time. I had the stitch length set where I want it, and I made the assumption that every place I plotted a point, if that was shorter than the stitch length, that it would generate a stitch there. It does not do that, which is a little different than I'm used to when digitizing. So we're going to do it different just by shortening up the stitch length and getting the look we want. So I'm going to zoom in here on just his face. And we're going to start again from his eye, so we're just going to get that manual stitch down to here. Right click and then go ahead and change that to end with a trim so that it actually makes a trim down here. So now we're going to get our running stitch tool, and I think the stitch length was at 3 millimeters, which is pretty standard and kind of about where I like to run it. But in this case, I'm going to use 1.5 millimeters and apply that, and that will make the stitches I'm about ready to plot 1.5 millimeters, and will allow them to be shorter and give us a little bit different effect, and we're going to be able to make this look a little more round. And I guess you could do this with the manual stitches also, but in that case you would have to be really particular, because this will lengthen out the stitches. If they get too short with the manual stitches, it would probably just cause you a problem. So we're going to go ahead and keep the running stitch, and we're going to make this a little more round this time, like that, and it will stay round after we make stitches out of this. So we got our points. I'm going to do this, I think, a little different than I did last time. We're just going to make that a little thickness there, and we're just going to work our way back, right back along this line. And what we're going to see when we're done here is, since I've set that stitch length a little shorter, and I'm going to right click, you can see it follows this curve a little better rather than this pointed. It was taking all these stitch needle penetrations out and just averaging this off to fit what setting was 3 millimeters. And I made the assumption that it was going to needle was going to penetrate everywhere I put a stitch, because it was shorter than the stitch length, and the software doesn't work that way. So now that we know that, now we've got a little bit more rounded nose. Let's turn that backdrop off. That's a little bit better than we had before. Noses are hard, and the way I've decided to do it, not connecting it up here, I think is the way I think it's going to look best for the way the picture looks. So we're going to call that our first edit of this video. The next one's going to be a little bit more complicated, and if you can't follow me, I'm sorry. Maybe you watch it a couple times. I'll try to get all the information you need in here to actually do this edit, what I want to do and what I want to change. And this isn't a necessary change, other than it would give us some more options, is I want to change the way his hair is done a little bit. We're going to actually use a complex fill, and we're going to leave the hair as it sits right now on top of that complex fill. And I'm going to do it in 2 sections, and in the video here, if it runs long, I'll just do the one section and we'll add the other outside the video. So what we're going to do is, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take and make a complex fill that covers this side. We'll call it the side fill of his hair, and then we'll do one for the top. But to do that, we need to get that inserted into the middle here, and there's probably a couple ways to do it. This is the way I'm going to do it, is like this. This hair right here is all done as one stitch, and it's really hard to see over here, but it's this one right here. And it starts with a travel stitch that comes up to here, and then it actually does all the hair and ends right back at the same spot. I'm going to break that into 2 parts. So anybody unfamiliar with how to do that, I'm going to get my shape tool, and this travel stitch, as you can see, it's got the green dot here. It's where it starts, and we go up here, we do all this hair, and we end right here on the red dot. I'm going to break this into 2, and with my shape tool, I'm going to click on this node right up here, right click, and split line. And what that's done is it's taken this and split it right at that part. So we now have, if I can find it, we have this piece of hair which starts here, which is where I split it, does all this and ends right there. Now if I need to find that over here, which is right there, and I'm going to click on that and change that to, we'll call that side hair. And that's going to make that easier to find the next time. So we call that side hair. And then if we go right above that, that'll be our travel stitches up to there, which are just buried. I have a tough time doing this. I'm not sure how they expect us to do it. I right click and then click on it, and that allows me to change it. And I'm just going to call that travel. We know that that's really just buried anyway, just getting us up to the hair. So now that we've got two parts there, we've got the side hair and we've got the travel up to there. So now that that's broke apart, we could have done that later. What I'm going to do is when I start digitizing this complex fill, it's actually going to put it at the end, and then we're just going to move this up here so the fill is in between these two, and that will put our running stitches on top of the fill. So all we need to do at this point is get our complex fill tool, and we're going to need to start it right up here where these other stitches stop and end. So we'll just start there and we'll go around this area with our complex fill tool, and we'll come down a little bit further than here, and we'll come out just a little bit further, just like this, and we'll work our way back to the beginning, and there we've got our fill. So the first thing we're not going to want on this fill, and I'll just change it right off the bat here, is we're going to want a lot less density there. I'm going to run that up to our density up to 0.8, and that didn't work because I didn't have it selected. Now we're going to run it up to 0.8. That's an important thing to know right there. Make sure you have it selected before you change it, or you're only changing what will happen to the next fill you digitize. So we're going to say apply that, and while we're in there, we're going to turn our underlay off because of the sketchy look of this. We don't want any stitches going in any direction we don't want. So we'll turn that underlay off. Now it's running up and down, and we'll go ahead and set the direction of that fill, and to do that I get my shape tool, and we can see right now it's at 90 degrees. I think they call it 90. It's straight up and down. We'll just call it straight up and down, and I want to put it roughly the direction of my lines there, and that may seem counterintuitive, but I really want that hair to run that way. In these running stitches, hopefully will just be a different stitch length and will show a little texture. If I do it opposite that, they will stand out a lot on those walk stitches, will stand out a lot on the fill, but it's going to look weird because his hair is going to be running, or some of the lines will be running different direction. So we'll go ahead and right click that. Now they're running the same direction, and we're going to go ahead and make these fill stitches. Now you're going to get a lot of different looks here, but I'm going to go ahead and make them 2.5 millimeters, and that'll make them a little shorter. And right now we've got the fill the way I want it. I'm going to take this complex fill that I just digitized. That's not where we want to run it in order of what we've digitized, so we just grab it right here in our sequence view, and we're going to run it up to, and it's not going to scroll, there it goes. We're going to drop it on the travel stitch, which I believe will put it between the travel and the side hair. If I'm right, it did. So we've got our travel stitches up, we've got our complex fill, and then we'll put those the side hair running stitches on top, and those are a little bit longer. In fact, let's just go ahead and lengthen those out just a little bit more. It's going to be hard to see on the screen anyway, but they're on top of that. So let's go through that one more time. Travel up to here, because this is a sequencing thing. Travel up to here, and that will, let's get this tool turned on, our shape tool. It ends there. Then the next thing is our complex fill, shape tool again, and well, we're going to have to change that. We want it to basically to start up here, and we want it to end up here. So I'm going to move both of them up there and let it figure out how to do that. But we want it to end up here because our next stitch, our side hair, starts up here back to our shape tool, and it shows our start and stop is up here close enough that that's all going to blend together, and that will be on top of the complex fill. So that's how you can add a group of stitches. And I renamed our stitches so it made a little bit more sense. You could go in and rename this complex fill to, we could say side fill hair. We could do that. We could call it whatever we want. But that way, if we ever want to go back in and we say we want to get rid of that, we could just come back in here and delete it, and it's gone. And I will undo that. So there, it's back. So from here, I don't think I'm going to go any further. I'm not going to put the hair underneath here, but we would do the same thing here. We would find this group of stitches here, and we would do another fill to cover this area, and then we would put it in the sequence where it runs, and then that fill would run, and we could start tweaking that fill as far as stitch length. We could tweak it as far as the stitch length of the stitches on top of it, just to give us different looks. It gives us a little bit more. Well, we could adjust the density too. That would give us another look. I mean, this was 0.8. We could go maybe 1 millimeter, something like that, depending on the look you really want to get. So hopefully that editing there gives you a few ideas you can do, how you can resequence something pretty easily. And from there, I think the only thing I want to do is, last thing here, is I want to tweak this a little bit. If we're going to assume this is his ear, let's pull this up a little bit and give this just a little bit more rounded shape. That stuck out to me all of a sudden there, and I got to change it before we go here. So that looks a little bit better. So let's zoom out a little bit and see what it looks like. We won't see those manual running stitches on top, but after we sew it, I think we'd see them pretty good. So hopefully we all learned something in that video, and we'll see you in the next one.